Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Backstage with Fred Cooper, which is me. And I'm happy to have Nelson Riddle's third son, who is...
No, third child.
Third child.
Second son.
Second son of the great Nelson Riddle. And Chris is going to be leading the band tonight. It's not an orchestra tonight. We have a band, right?
We have a band. Well, if we had a couple of strings, it would be an orchestra.
Right. Okay. We don't have the strings. But it's really a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's
very much.
I'm very pleased to be here.
Yeah. And let's talk about, now you've been in this business a long time. You've been, what, 20 years?
More.
20 plus?
More.
Plenty
No,
plus.
keep going.
30 years?
I used to get to stay up late and go out and do club dates with my father when I was 8 years old, so I could be the band boy and be the librarian. And
now some of these people don't know what a band boy is.
Band boy sets up the music stands and makes sure the music stand lights work and they're plugged in and there's extra bulbs and what have you. And librarian makes sure that all the music is there and that it's in order. And if it needs repairing, any parts or recopying or anything, he takes care of that too.
At 8 you were doing this?
I was doing it, yeah.
Your dad was very, very, very famous.
Very. He didn't pay me for it though, believe me. I worked cheap.
Maybe that's why he took you.
I think he did, yeah.
Let's talk about some of the people that you've met and some of the people even before your time that your dad played for, with. He directed, of course. He arranged. He wrote.
He composed and arranged. Yes.
Yes. Let's go through.
Well, Dad left home when he was 19 years old.
From where?
From Ridgewood, New Jersey, and he joined a band. There was a minor society band leader by the name of Jerry Wald in New York City at the time, and Dad joined Jerry Wald's band, and from that he was apparently attracted some attention to the point where when Charlie Spivak needed a third trombone player and an arranger, my father always worked in the dual capacity of trombonist arranger, he managed to get on Charlie's band. And you know, Charlie's band was really financed by Glenn Miller.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Glenn Miller wanted someone. Glenn Miller had a contract at the Café Rouge, and he didn't want to stick around and be there all the time because it crimped his style. So he needed somebody to sub for him there. So he helped Charlie get started. He lent him the money, and Charlie bought him the music stands and what have you, and I guess started the library for him. And meanwhile, my father joined Charlie's band in December of 1940 and left Charlie's band in January of 43. At that point, he had to either go into the Army, but being the sole support of his mother, he was able to instead do some service with the Merchant Marine at Sheepshead Bay, New York. Fortunately, there were a lot of fiddle players who also sought to serve their country at Sheepshead Bay in New York, and my father, therefore, learned to write for fiddles, for strings, all kinds of strings. He wrote beautiful things for strings, as we all know, but that was really where he learned to do it, at Sheepshead Bay, because there was all these string players, and they were all serving their country, fighting the Battle of Sheepshead Bay to a standstill, as my father used to say. From there, after being there for about a year, Willie Schwartz was there, as a matter of fact. Willie Schwartz, who just died about a year ago, and Willie joined the Glenn Miller Band in 1938. I believe he was at the ripe old age of 17 at the time.
Wow.
A contemporary. My father also was born in 1921. But from the Merchant Marine, he went. Bill Finnegan got him a berth. The great Bill Finnegan, Sauter Finnegan, the great
Yes.
arranging duo. Bill's still alive. He lives in Monroe, Connecticut, about an hour and a half from me in Massachusetts. But Bill got Dad a berth with Tommy Dorsey in 1944, playing trombone and writing arrangements for Tommy. And actually, there's a funny story because my father was very well liked by Tommy. He thought a lot of my father, and because my father was very diligent and for workmanlike, and Tommy was anything but. So I think he saw something, admired something in my father that he didn't really have. In any case, he took him under his wing, and one night after the gig, he asked my father to have dinner with him. And my father, they were sitting there having dinner, and he said to my father, he said, "You know, Nelson, I love what you're writing for the band, but I wish you wouldn't make everything so dependent on the string section." My father was shocked, because Tommy had carried the biggest string section of any band, you know, huge, had about 24 strings or something, you know. So my father was just crestfallen when he heard this, and Tommy said, after all, they're just a tax deduction, and I'm liable to drop them any time. Meanwhile, my father, as chagrined as he was, he said it was one of the best lessons that was ever taught him. He went back to his room and he stayed up all night and he rewrote all the arrangements so that they could be played with or without strings.
How about that? That's amazing.
Substituting a lot of the string parts for saxophones, so he could use it both ways.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. What was your dad's first song that he wrote?
Dad wasn't a songwriter, per se. He didn't write many songs, but I'll tell you, one of his first big arrangements, one of his first big orchestrations, made a lot of money for Charlie Spivak, and it was White Christmas.
Is that right?
He wrote a gorgeous arrangement for Charlie Spivak of White Christmas.
Was it recorded?
Oh yeah, Charlie recorded, made a lot of money on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dad got $5, I think. No, he got $7.50 because he copied the parts.
But no, he did write some music, though.
Oh, he wrote a lot of movies, music for motion pictures
Sure.
and themes and what have you. In fact, he wrote a beautiful song for a Frank Sinatra movie called Johnny Concho back in 1955.
Mm-hmm.
And it was called Wait for Me. It was a beautiful song. But he wrote a lot of things, but unfortunately Dad became, not unfortunately, well, unfortunately on the one hand, because he really wanted to really flex his wings more as a composer. But as it turned out, he was so skillful at taking someone's song and molding it into a tapestry for a vocalist that that's really what he became most known for and most prized.
Mm-hmm.
His abilities were most prized for, especially by Nat King Cole. He did such things for Nat King Cole as Mona Lisa, Unforgettable, Too Young, Somewhere Along the Way, Tenderly, Autumn Leaves. I could go on like this all night. Frank Sinatra, I Got You Under My Skin, I've Got the World on a String, Learning the Blues, Hey Jealous Lover, All the Way.
Frank always talks about him, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
my
usually
father
when
did
he,
most of his comeback was really molded by Nelson Riddle. There's no question about it, because before that, he was out of work. He was out of a job.
And then you were talking about Linda Ronstadt.
Well, Linda Ronstadt, well, you know, in between, we're trying to do 45 years of my father's career in not even as many seconds,
Right.
minutes, I
Right.
should say.
I understand
So it's
that.
hard to do it. We're jumping now, we're jumping about 25 years to Linda Ronstadt. My father was really kind of in retirement, as it were, not really by choice, but the way things have got to, as it were, and we all know it because all you have to do is turn the television on, and we're constantly assaulted by this stuff that they call music. I don't know what it is. It's downright primitive, jungle drums or whatever. I don't know. But in any case, Dad was pretty much. I mean, he was pretty much looking around. What am I going to do next? Linda Ronstadt called my father in 1983 and asked him to write an arrangement for her for a standard called I Guess I'll Hang My Tears Out to Dry. And my father responded with, I'd love to, but only if I get to do an album. I don't want to do just a piecemeal, just a little bit of something. I want to do a whole album. He called me up after that and he said, I said, gee, Dad, that's amazing, Linda Ronstadt, because I had just been thinking about her because I grew up with her. You know, she sang with a group called the Stone Ponies back in the 60s. And the Different Drummer, that was a big song, big hit song. But I thought, this is wild, you know, and I said, what did you say when she said about, I guess I'll hang my tears? And he said, I offered to do an album for her. And what did she say? And my father said, I'm waiting to hear. Well, we all know what happened. It's called What's New.
That's right.
And it was gorgeous.
Fantastic.
And it sold 3.5 million copies. It sold more. At that point, I don't think there was ever a record of music of that nature, of standards, American standards, with a 50-piece orchestra, all recorded live. Linda didn't overdub anything. There were 100 takes on some of those things. But she was great. She knew what she wanted, and she got it. But that was the biggest selling popular music album, I believe, maybe of all time. 3.5 million copies and still selling.
Wow.
And that led to another record called Lush Life, which was even better, and not as pure, because it wasn't the first, as it were. And then they finished with an album called For Sentimental Reasons, which was a big Nat King Cole hit.
That's right.
That my father did with Nat, probably about 1955. My father was dead, though, by the time it came out.
And when did your father pass away?
He died on October the 6th, 1985.
85.
And he was working on a record with Frank Sinatra. Frank had approached him at the inauguration for Reagan in January. I was with my father, dutifully being the band boy, librarian, bass trombone player, and tuba player. I even brought my tuba all the way to Washington, D.C., because the guy said he'd written a bunch of stuff for the tuba, and I said, well, I'll bring my tuba with me. And then I got there and I found the contractor came over to me and said, why'd you lug this thing all the way across the country for? And I said, well, I called places around there to rent it. He said, oh, you should have just talked to me. Meanwhile, I lugged this. When it got back to Los Angeles, I didn't recognize it. It had more dents in it than
Is that right?
I could believe. But in any case, after the inauguration, my father served as music director for Reagan's inauguration, Frank Sinatra being the producer and the director of the show. And afterwards, we went to a big party at the Madison Hotel, and Frank Sinatra and my father, it was like they hadn't seen each other in 25 years. They were inseparable for about an hour. And afterwards, I said to my father, I said, what did you guys talk about? Old times and what have you? And I said, well, what's the upshot? He said, Frank wants to do a 3-record album of standards that we've never done before, so nothing would be reheated. When Frank moved to Reprise from Capitol with my father, he redid a lot of the things that he had done at Capitol with my father. My father wasn't happy about that because naturally he'd already written that. He wanted to do new things. So he was thrilled at this, and he was working on this record, this album, this 3-record album that they were going to do. Probably in 1986 they'd record it, and he died.
You were talking to me a little bit earlier, and I think the audience would like to know about how brilliant your dad was, number one, how fast he was in the things he did. Tell us, tell the audience that story.
Dad had the ability, not only the incredible ability to orchestrate for every instrument. He wrote every note. He didn't sketch. A lot of guys, a lot of composers and arrangers sketch things. They make a basic framework, as it were, on score paper, and they hand it to an orchestrator. He fills in all the blanks. Meanwhile, the guy who did the sketch gets all the credit. My father didn't do that. He wrote every note himself. He wrote in a linear way. There's 4 bars on each page of score paper, and he wrote down like this, just like that. And I asked him once, I said, Dad, because he did incredible amounts of work in very short periods of time, many times he'd be recording with Nat King Cole in the afternoon. He'd be recording with Nat at Capitol in the afternoon, and then they'd have about an hour and a half before Frank came in at 8 o'clock to do his record date with Nelson Riddle at Capitol. This is back in the 1950s, at the golden years at Capitol Records on Vine Street. And my father would move over to an empty studio with a piano and a desk, and he would sit there and he would write a whole orchestration in that hour and a half, not have dinner or anything or take a break. And that's really why he died after 64 years of life, because he had the ability to do that in a very, very quick way, but in the meantime, his body suffered for it. He worked his buns off, literally. And I asked him, I said, Dad, where did you learn to write so fast? And he said, I had to. I had to develop a knack where I could work fast because there were deadlines. And when you've got deadlines, that's it. You've got to have the work done. And the music business, being as fickle as it is, when the phone rings and somebody says, I need 4 arrangements for tomorrow afternoon for a full orchestra, you can't say, well, I'm sorry, but you should have called me last week. You know, you do it. That's it.
Did you pick up any of these traits?
I write, and I write well, but I can't write very fast. It takes me days to write one arrangement.
That's amazing, isn't it?
I don't know how he did it. I just don't. His mind must have been just like a computer in a way, because he could better than a computer. Because I don't know how he did it, but he just worked so fast.
We have some pictures here. Let's show them.
Oh, here's my wife Elizabeth back in Massachusetts in Great Barrington. Now, I asked her for a lot of photos, and she said, well, some of these, I don't even have a negative on these. I can't let you have these. So she only let me have one.
What, is she doing a book?
My wife? Yeah. No, she's my scorekeeper.
Oh, is she?
She keeps track of everything, my wife Elizabeth.
That's good.
But she did let me have this photo, and this photo features, on this side is a gentleman by the name of George Roberts, this gentleman, and he is a bass trombone player. He's the bass trombone player.
You said the best.
The best. He's absolutely the best. And That's my dad, Nelson Riddle. And that's me at age 12 with my first trombone. But I learned to play the trombone on my father's old King 2B Liberty that was actually one of Tommy Dorsey's trombones, because Tommy had a gold King trombone, gold plated. And every now and again Tommy would get angry, and he was very powerful man, and he'd break it in one way or the other. So it would have to go back to the factory and be fixed. In the meantime, he had a regular brass, lacquered brass 2B as a backup horn. So when my father left the band, he talked the band boy into trading. My father had an identical trombone, so he talked the band boy into exchanging his 2B for Tommy's. So my father had Tommy's King 2B backup horn, and that's the horn I learned to play on. But one night at a record date, I believe it was a Frank Sinatra record date, George Roberts brought this trombone for me, which was an Olds Ambassador, which I played until I was about 17 years old, and then he gave me the one I'm playing now. And I've been playing that. I'm 42 now, so I've been playing that for 25 years. It looks it, but it's a great trombone. You're afraid to put new lacquer on them because it might ruin the sound of it. Now this is a Xerox, a pretty good Xerox, but this shows my father sitting at his piano in Santa Monica, California. This would be about, how old would I be there, do you think?
Oh.
2 years old,
yeah,
maybe? Okay,
yeah.
this would be in 1952 then. And there's my sister Rosemary, who's a year older than I, 2 years older than I am, Rosemary. And there's Skip, who's the eldest in the family. He's the one with the right name. His name is Nelson Riddle III. My father being Junior, his father being Nelson Riddle Sr.
Yeah.
And there's me sitting on his lap, and he's making as if he's showing me how to play. In fact, I came today I have shorts and sandals on today, so I look as
I know, I saw that. Any of the other
now here's
brothers,
no,
play?
nobody else went into music.
Is that
now here's the old sheet music for Lisbon Antigua, and there's Dad, and this would be about 1956, I would say. So Dad was 35 there, and we're going to play Lisbon Antigua tonight.
What are your favorite songs?
One of my favorite songs, one of Dad's favorites. He always was amazed at how wonderful some of the things were that he had written that weren't big hits, and yet Lisbon Antigua was the big hit. So it indicated. Now this is years later, not that many years later actually. After I was about 14 here, I think, and this is Bing Crosby, my sister Rosemary, my father, myself, and here's Dean Martin cooling his heels. Dean Martin with quite a good suntan. No, he got a sun courtesy of a Xerox machine, but I used to sing with a group, a chorus group, and we backed up Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, what have you. It's called the Jimmy Joyce Choir, and I sang with them.
Oh, I remember those.
Before my voice changed. Remember them from the Smothers Brothers show?
You bet.
Now here's a picture of my father, Maria Cole, Nat King Cole, and my mother. And they were on a tour promoting one of my father's big hits with Nat King Cole.
What do you think about Natalie's song that she does with her dad?
I'm not that happy with it because it's my father's arrangement. Unforgettable was my father's arrangement. He wrote it for Nat in August of 1951. Johnny Mandel purportedly changed a few things in it, and they gave him a Grammy Award for the best instrumental arrangement accompanying a vocal. Now, if that doesn't sound like the original arrangement, then I'm a liar, and I'm running for Congress. You know. Now
Your boys are getting anxious.
This is the
over
Tommy
here.
Dorsey Band in 1944 on the set of a movie called The Thrill of Romance with Van Johnson and Esther Williams, and Nelson Riddle is right up here in the corner here. And there's Tommy with his white suit on, and there's Nelson Riddle right up there in the corner, 1944 in Hollywood. And here's just a candid picture of Frank Sinatra and my father at a recording session at Capitol Records. And by the look on my father's face, I guess he's saying something to Frank like, "That's not the way we figured it out. That's not what you said."
Were you real close with your daddy?
Yeah, I was very close with my father, and I'm absolutely. If you'd like to have
I thank you. I really thank you for that.
No, my father and I were very, very close, and there's not a day goes by when I don't think about him. And quite frankly, when I come to California, I see an awful lot of things that maybe that's why I had to leave.
Yeah, I understand.
I see a lot of things that just gets to me, you know.
Sure. He was super. And I wish I had met him. but I second best.
Actually,
Chris?
this is the best thing for contact lenses. Some natural moisture, boy. It makes them feel.
Well,
they don't feel like dimes in my eyes anymore.
Yeah, I understand. But it's good to have you here. I'm glad you went on and following in your dad's footsteps. I'm just happy to have your group here tonight.
Well, we're happy to be here.
Thank
believe
you
me.
very much.
And for everyone who couldn't be here tonight, God bless you. I hope you're doing better and getting well and enjoying your life and what have you. But maybe next time, if I'm lucky enough to be able to come back, maybe you can see us next time.
Good, good. Just a minute.
No,
You might
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. We've been with Chris Riddle, the son of Nelson Riddle, and their band will be playing tonight. I wish you could be here, but maybe next time. Thank you. Good night. See you next time.
God bless. I have a wonderful surprise for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very lovely lady who sings she sings great. Her name is Carol Delane, and here she is. Go, Carol.
I love the East, I love the West, the North, the South, they both are best. But I'll only go there as a guest, 'cause I love being here with you. I love the sea, I love the shore, I love the rock, but what is more, with you, dear, it'd never be a chore, 'cause I love being here with you. Singing in the shower, laughing by the hour, life's such a groovy game. Through all kinds of weather, as long as we're together, I love to hear you call my name. I love good wine, fine cuisine, our candlelight, I dig the scene. Baby, if you know what I mean, I love being here with you.
We're gonna play something, ladies and gentlemen, that's a medley of great big band hits. It starts with Tommy Dorsey's Song of India, which my father played many, many times, more times than he ever wanted to remember, probably. It's funny how the big bands had a way of what do I want to say, tearing to pieces the great classics. You know, where Bartok had his day, and the March Slave, they went after everything that wasn't nailed down in those days. At least it was good stuff they went after. And it finishes, I think, with 1 o'clock jump. I think you're going to like this.